You're listening to The Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with Lyndia Grant.
Well, good evening, Radio 1 listeners. Thank you for tuning in to The Lyndia Grant Show. Today is Friday, February 27th, our last Black History Month show. We do record on Tuesdays, but this is our February 27th show, and we're going to be only talking to Dr. Julian Melville because our editor, Shehu Maid, had major surgery, and he wanted to make sure that we could talk about Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. So this is a show today where Dr. Julian is going to be able to talk about the State of the Union and anything else she wants, but in particular, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. Welcome to the show again, Dr. J.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Lyndia, and healing graces to Sekou. We appreciate him so much. We're praying for his healing, his rapid healing. Now, as you said, I want to talk about Reverend Jackson next week, beginning with March 2nd. We will see all kinds of tributes, and not only tributes, but really homegoing services. He'll lie in the South Carolina State House, I believe. He will be in South Carolina on March 2nd. He'll be in D.C. either the 3rd or 4th. Arrangements are still being made as we speak. And then he'll be headed to Chicago. There will be a community celebration at the House of Hope in Chicago. And on that Friday, I believe that's the 5th. And there will be a homegoing service at Rainbow on the 6th. It will be a private service because the building is very small. The auditorium probably doesn't hold but 1,000 people. But Mrs. Jackson insisted that Reverend built that house, and she believed he would want to go home from that house. And so that's how we're going to do it. It's a fascinating and very, very sad time. Of course, the Jackson family had asked that the president, I'm projecting, I'm back in 1988, that Reverend Jackson be allowed to lie in state at the rotunda. He was denied that privilege. But as far as I'm concerned, I wrote a column about it. I said, the rotunda is too small for him. I would not want Reverend Jackson in no rotunda. And excuse my split verbs, but I'm splitting them on purpose. We don't need no rotunda. His spirit was bigger than that. His spirit was not marble. It wasn't, it's a room they would not let him in. But how many rooms had he been denied entry to? And what did he do with that? He was denied entry to the library at 17 years old because he needed a book. Democrats tried to deny him the nomination and talk a whole lot of smack about him when he was trying to run. They had a lot of negativity out there. It didn't stop him. He was the greatest politician, not the greatest Black politician, the greatest politician of our generation. At 84 years old, he redefined democratic politics. He redefined what it meant to be included or excluded. So Reverend Jackson will never be defined by the rooms he was left out of, but by the rooms that he sat in. He negotiated hostage relief, negotiated it. He didn't have a platform. He wasn't invited. He went over to these countries and he negotiated hostage release. He has done, he did so much that is so unrecognized. And so how dare that person who lives in a house that enslaved people built, and Lil Mike Johnson. And when I say little, I used to call him Lil Mike Johnson Jess because he's short. And then a friend of mine who's short said, well, you shouldn't do that because you're making fun of his height. And, we all try to take the high road, kind of. And he can't help the fact that he's short. But when I say Lil Mike Johnson these days, I don't mean that he's short. I mean that he's petty.
Right.
He has a small mind. That he does not know the meaning of words like common decency. But he has a lot in common with his fearless leader, that man who lives in the house that enslaved people built. And let me just pivot back to that. Enslaved people built the rotunda, built the house, built that house. Enslaved people built that whole Capitol complex. So to deny one of their descendants the right to lay in state after all he's done is simply a reflection of their smallness, their pettiness, their ignorance, their lack of historical gravitas. And so we're not mad at them.
Mm-hmm.
It allows us to see, first of all, who they are, but also who and whose we are.
Mm-hmm.
And we went, and here's what we know about Reverend Jackson. I'm smiling, Lindy. I think last week I told you I was really sad. Well, I'm both sad and I'm also happy.
Yes.
Reverend Jackson is not in pain anymore. He is free.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
He's meeting his mentor, Dr. King.
Mm-hmm.
He's looking at the others. He's hugging Rosa Parks. He's looking at those others those South Carolina Congress people from the Reconstruction era, one of whom was killed just because he was a congressman.
That's right.
Well, he's reuniting with our history. And it's so poignant for this to happen during Black History Month. But you know what?
Mm-hmm.
Like Reverend might have planned it.
Exactly. It looks like it, doesn't it?
Because he is our Black history.
He passed away right in the middle of Black History Month, around the 17th. And you know what? I can understand you being sad when we recorded last week because it had just happened only a few hours earlier.
Exactly. But but right now, I ain't no ways tired. I am full of joy and full of celebration.
Mm-hmm.
What we're going to be doing next week is celebrating the life of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. We'll be celebrating his life. And so, I'm filled with joy.
Amen.
He has gone home. And there's just so much to say about him. We're not going to say it all because we have a limited amount of time. But I would simply say again, I will just close by saying he is too big for the rotunda of the United States Capitol. Mm-hmm. Just too big, too great, too amazing. We don't need that.
That's right.
And I don't know if he will want it, and I don't know that I want it. For him to be sitting there, I mean, it's a place of honor, but whose honor? Whose honor?
And especially Dr. J, I wouldn't want to go there if somebody told me no, don't bring me someplace I'm not welcome. I wouldn't even want to stoop that low. No.
And Reverend Jackson, he busted open doors.
Mm-hmm.
Put his foot through doors.
Yes, he did.
And that was his legacy. Mm-hmm. So keeping him out, frankly, only cements his legacy.
Yes.
I went to places where I was unwanted, where historically I was excluded, and I made something out of it. And what he created was a movement, just a movement of people who let's not forget how many voters that he registered, how many states he went to, raising money and awareness for all kind of causes. One of the things I've said about him years ago, and I don't even remember when, I think it was about 2015, the Black MBA magazine assigned me to hang out with him for a day. And what amazed me about that day, I recall it vividly, is how he quickly pivoted from children needing eyeglasses. In his Saturday meeting, he made a plea for people, bring your old frames, blah, blah, eyeglasses. And he went from that to geopolitics. And, it requires a very different skill set to talk about international affairs and to talk about education. But he was able to do both. And why? Because both of those issues were connected by issues of who has access and who has power. So this whole conversation that we're having about the rotunda, access, power. But power is not defined by Lil Mike Johnson and his coterie of rascals. It's defined by what people recognize. And, Reverend Jackson has been recognized, not just here in the United States, but all over the world. All over the world. So if his home country is so petty as to say, you can't be in the rotunda, you know what? I won't repeat it. It's Christian radio, so I won't tell you what my reply to them is. But y'all who know me, just imagine.
Yes, indeed.
Multi-syllabically.
Thank you, Dr. J. We're going to go to our commercial break, and we'll be back to talk about Think on These Things at the Lyndia Grant Show. Back in a moment.
If it wasn't for my care coach at AmeriHealth, I probably wouldn't be so healthy right now. As a man, we don't get checkups or see a doctor regularly anyways. It's probably just a man thing because none of my partners go either. We know we should, but we just don't, and hope it works out.
So what changed for you?
AmeriHealth assigned me a care coach, somebody that gives one-on-one help, answer questions, explain things, and help set my appointments. She also helped me understand what having high blood pressure really means and ways to manage it so it doesn't kill me. It ain't nothing to play with. If you're a member of AmeriHealth, ask for a care coach. I'm glad I got mine.
At AmeriHealth, if you need a care coach, you can have one. Just call us at 1-877-759-6224 to get connected. 1-877-759-6224. This program is funded in part by the government of the District of Columbia Department of Healthcare Finance. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Washington Informer religion columnist Lyndia Grant.
Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a segregated Montgomery bus. In lectures on brotherhood, Ms. Parks often said, "People always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired. But that wasn't true. I was not tired physically. I was not old. I was 42. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in." Driven out of Montgomery by harassment and death threats, Detroit, Michigan became her new home. Rosa Parks will always be remembered as the mother of the civil rights movement. Raised in the AME church, she once said, "I remember finding such comfort and peace while reading the Bible."
Read more in the religion column of the Washington Informer, an award-winning African-American newspaper. We don't report crime or gossip, just positive news. Pick up the Washington Informer or visit us online at washingtoninformer.com. Call 202-561-4100 for more information.
This is Frank Smith with the African American Civil War Museum in Washington, D.C., located at 1925 Vermont Avenue Northwest on the Green Line. Did you know that a recent study found that children who visit museums do better in school and in life than children who do not? So parents, teachers, and preachers, let's get moving. I promise you, if you bring your children to the African American Civil War Museum, they will be inspired by the images that they see. They will be impressed by our living history reenactors who are always available, and they will be involved in our scavenger hunt that takes them throughout our exhibit. That's the African American Civil War Museum, 1925 Vermont Avenue. Our hours are 10 to 6:30 on weekdays, 12 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. See it, be inspired.
And we are back. Thank you for tuning in to the Lyndia Grant Show. Our subtopic is Think on These Things. Dr. Julianne Malvo is going to continue now talking about the economy, politics. Reverend Jesse Jackson, that's her choice.
Well, let's talk about the State of the Union address, which happened on Tuesday night. It was, as usual, a disgrace, but what do we expect? The man who lives in a house that enslaved people built talked for an hour and 47 minutes, nearly 2 hours, the longest State of the Union address ever. He even out-talked himself. The last one he did, I think, was an hour and 30-some minutes or 20-some minutes, but he just went on and on. And what did he do? What did he say? He lied.
Broke his own record.
Yep. But he lied. He scapegoated. He was distracted. He, it was ridiculous. He told so many lies. There was an economist on CNN who said he counted at least 17 economic lies. That's just economic lies. He told all kind of other lies. He said this was the best economy ever. Ask somebody who's trying to buy groceries. He said the inflation was lower than ever. That's not true. He said he inherited a horrible economy. Again, not true. He mentioned President Biden, former President Biden, at least 12 times that I counted. And of course, every time he said Biden, he said something about a failed economy. The economy was turning around under President Biden.
That's right.
So now, of course, President Biden, we all had issues. We had COVID that we had to deal with, and that put a bum on the economy. We went into a recession. That put a glitch on the economy. But inflation under President Biden had gone down to about 3%. The target is usually 2%. So Biden was not the worst economy that we've ever seen. But of course, he has to say that because that makes him feel better. You almost had to laugh through this thing. There's no bipartisanship. He did nothing to try to bring the country together. Instead, he offered these false choices. If you believe that American people, so the safety of American people is more important than undocumented people, stand up. Well, that's a false question. They're two different things. And many Democrats did not stand up. And so he yelled and screamed that you ought to be ashamed of yourself. That's his new one, apparently, because he used it last week with the Supreme Court. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Notably, only 4 of the Supreme Court justices attended. Many did not. Usually, everybody comes. It's Supreme Court, whole Congress. About 30 members of Congress did not attend. They had a People's State of the Union. I'm not sure where it was, but many of the congressional representatives chose to sit it out. And then, of course, my favorite, Brother Al Green, they put him out again. They put him out last year for waving his cane. This time, he had a sign that said, Black people are not apes. And so they put him out. Notably, that president has yet to ever apologize for the ape meme of Barack and Michelle Obama that he had on his his feed. He has yet to apologize for it. He defiantly has said he didn't make any mistakes. Well, that means you meant to do that. Then they blamed it on a junior staffer. We don't know his or her name. That to me is striking. If she or he is a staffer, who are they? And have they experienced any repercussions? And the answer to that would be no as well. So this president has behaved as he usually does, defiantly, arrogantly, operating as just a bold-faced liar. We heard what we heard, and what didn't we hear? Well, let me start though with he said we're not used to winning, but he has had the winningest first year ever. Ask somebody who got picked up by ICE by mistake. Ask Renee Good, is this the winningest year? Then, as an example, he shouted out the men's Olympic hockey team. Well, we're glad they won, but that has nothing to do with his politics. And they, of course, were invited to attend the State of the Union, to attend the White House, and they did, and good for them. It has nothing to do with politics. Meanwhile, there were women who had been exploited by the Jeffrey Epstein group, just that whole mess. No recognition of them at all. No, we're sorry you went through that. You don't have to apologize to Epstein. Epstein is Epstein. But it seems to me these women who were sex trafficked at very young ages, and many members of Congress invited individuals of them to come, and it seemed to me they could have been mentioned. They should have been apologized to. But again, Bakari Sellers made a very telling point. He said, this is a man who does not apologize for anything. He does not believe that he's ever been wrong. Well, we see how wrong he is with the tariffs. And he lied about the tariffs also. He claimed these tariffs are bringing all this money. Well, we know that tariffs have cost people money, cost American citizens money. But he doesn't want to talk about that. He claims when it's all over with, it'll be fine. So, he was very defiant, very angry. His whole affect was, I want to fight. He's the president of the United States. The affect should be, let's bring people together. Let's try to do some things together. What can we agree on? But no, he didn't do that. And so Abigail Spanberger, the governor of Virginia, the new governor of Virginia, one of 2 women governors that came in this last cycle, she did the response to him. And she basically said, these are just lies. Just ask the people. And that is what people are saying, is ask the people how this is going for them. Ask people. The other thing he didn't mention, a lot of stuff he didn't mention. He certainly didn't mention racial equality or the housing market. He mentioned it in passing, but not the home ownership racial gap where, only 40-some% of Black people own their homes compared to nearly more than 70% of whites. He didn't mention that. But the one thing he didn't mention that really stood out for me, Lyndia, he did not mention China. Now, China is kicking our behind. He's on his way to China. So I think he's going next week. So I think he's being very careful. But the fact is that there should have been some mention of China. But there's so many things there should have been mention of. In an hour and 40 some minutes, he basically blathered and blathered and BS. And I'm trying to be very careful here, respecting the Christianity of our listeners. But it was blather. He just, blabbermouth. And he didn't get sidetracked as many times as he usually does. He just kept repeating himself. But that's a Republican tactic. If you say something enough times, somebody's gonna believe it's true.
That's right.
You say it enough times, and he over and over and over again made the same points. But you know what? This was not a State of the Union address, really, Lyndia. It was really an election address. Really looking at 2026 midterm elections. He's trying to sell himself to the American people again. Try to tell people that they can't believe their lying eyes. So the repetition was awful.
And even with his low polling numbers right now.
Exactly. He should have been able to, yes, his polling numbers are totally in the toilet, and he should have been able to make a case that included the economy. What was he elected on? He was elected on the economy and immigration. Well, he did tell immigration stories, but he told immigration lies. And just like he told economic lies. American people are not looking for lies. And one of the things we know about the American people, everybody believes that people should obey the law. Well, not everybody. He doesn't, certainly. But most people believe that people should obey the law. Well, we have law-abiding people here who are undocumented, who go to work every day, who deliver our groceries, who drive our Ubers, who are home health aides for our elderly. That's what we have in these these undocumented people. Nannies being picked up when they go to pick up a child up from school. The American people don't agree with that. Yeah, we want to get rid of the undocumented criminals. Yes, we want to do that. But people who are just living their lives, we want them to be left alone. But he didn't tell that story. He told his story. And as I said, he repeated it so many times that if you didn't know any better, you say, oh, he said it so many times, it must be the truth. But he would know truth if it laid down with him, and gave him a cold bath. He would know truth under that circumstance at all. So the State of the Union address, as far as I'm concerned, was a bust. But I'll say that the Republicans who were gathered were very enthusiastic. They, they stood when they were told to stand, just like a bunch of little lemmings, and sat after that. They were happy. They think that he's giving them something. But what we notice about the bipartisan, there is no bipartisanship. So Republicans saw it through their eyes, Democrats saw it through their eyes. But more and more Republicans, and this is key, are opening their eyes. And so more and more of them are saying, this is not what we voted for. This is not what we agreed to. We want to see prices come down. Oh, Lyndia, the lies. He said that.
I was getting ready to ask you about chicken costing less, and he was talking about different foods that cost less. I just couldn't get with that.
And I'm like, where does he go to well, he doesn't go to the grocery store, so he doesn't know. And the aggregate data doesn't show that. Just like with the gas price, he said, well, there were some gas stations.
Yes.
$1.99 gas. Well, guess how many? There's an organization that polls 150,000 gas stations. And in that poll, guess how many gas stations had gas at $1.99?
How many?
4.
4.
Really? And it was usually combined with premiums. In other words, you got that gas because you did X or you did Y, you did something. So that gas was just not coming to you because it was cheap. But 4 out of 150,000, that's less than 1/10 of 1%. That's less than 1/100th of 1%. So he's leaning on that, and that's just right. So we're just replete with lies. But see, this man doesn't mind telling lies because nobody checks him on them. At least in the first Trump term, they have fact checkers. Now they just make stuff up, put it in their speech, and expect people, to believe it. It makes no sense, but that's kind of where we are. Another thing we didn't hear from, but I guess we wouldn't. How much money has he made in this 1 year? He's talked about this 1 year having been such a success. Yeah, it was a success for the Trump family.
I think it's the B word, billion.
It's billions.
Yes.
I think it's 1.9 something. Anyways, billions of dollars. They've gone crypto. They're selling all kinds of stuff. And basically, nobody has called them on it. Now, this is a Republican Senate and a Republican Congress, so there's not a lot Democrats can do, but there are some things. And of course, as we said, we've seen the Congress push so hard for the Epstein files that now very famous people are falling down. Prince Andrew, of course, former Prince Andrew, is under investigation. Former British ambassador under investigation. And so there's so many others. Even some women who maintain friendships with Epstein and who now, one was a Biden sub-cabinet member. And then she went on to work for some company where she's just tendered her resignation because she's all up in the Epstein files. You know, again, we talked about Reverend Jackson in the context of access.
But let's close with him so we can get off of Donald John Trump.
All right, let's close with you. Absolutely. Let's just, as I said, the main funeral will be held next Saturday, the big celebration at the House of Hope. And all I want to say is rest in power, my brother, my friend, rest in power, Reverend Jackson. All of us, none of us can claim ownership of Reverend Jackson except for his family. But all of us have memories.
But you on this board and you head up to tell them what you do.
Well, I'm the president of Push Excel, which is the education arm of Rainbow. We save millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. So I'll stop there. Push Excel is an important organization, and Reverend Jackson founded it back in 1972 to make sure that even as he did politics, he would also do education.
Amen. Amen. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, for being our guest today to talk about the life of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. And I just want to close, if I have just a moment, to remind anyone who don't know, back in 1983, my company commissioned the bronze bust of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. We call it the official bronze bust because Reverend Jesse Jackson sat for it to be measured, and he even sat for it once it was done so that the sculptor Retha Walden Gambaro could make editorial graphical changes. And she said he would have to sit because it's all right that we use photographs. So I just wanted you all to know I have a very special connection to Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, and that happened in 1985. And thank you so much, Dr. Julianne, for being our guest today. That does it for the Lyndia Grant Show. Good day.
We must never surrender. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive on tomorrow night and beyond. Keep hope alive. I love you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with your host, Lyndia Grant.